Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Clif High coming to the show today, and I really needed to talk to Clif. I have done so many hard, and people who follow me know I'm doing some pretty heavy-duty interviews lately on some pretty tough subjects. And not that Clif and I don't talk about tough subjects, but it's so much fun for me to talk to Clif. And I know a lot of you like to listen to Clif, so it's a treat when we get him on. But I got to tell you that we talk about the trends, and a lot of people have been worried that some of the trends it doesn't come true and things. And so we talk about it, how his percentage of accuracy is so much higher than so many other things, and why this is just one data source. You can't invest everything into some crypto because you hear a psychic or a trend forecaster or somebody say it's going to happen. You have to be careful. And we talk about why that happens. And then we talk about all sorts of interesting things. How many of the forecasts that he's done in the past have actually come true or is happening now? Just a phenomenal, interesting interview. So what I understand is that Clif right now is on the chat. So hopefully you get an opportunity to interact with him. I am sorry. I am on vacation in Mexico. I had to take a break. So it just happened to land right on this day. So I'm sorry I'm not there. But I want to get right into this interview and not spend too much more time talking. So let's start the interview with Clif High. Hi, Clif. Thank you so much for rejoining the program.
Thank you for inviting me, Sarah. It's going to be quite fun.
Yes, I have done some really hard stuff lately, so I always have to get my dose of Clif in just to, even
it out a bit. Yeah.
It's not as, even though we can talk about some hard stuff, it's just not as hard as some of these things that we're going to be that I talk about. Okay, we're going to talk about predictions and near term, midterm, and past 2020. But before we get into that, there's been people that, and I've responded to some of these messages, but it's people that were upset because some of the predictions didn't come true in the past, and some of them are yet to come. And I've seen some of the stuff that you've done has come true. But I want to talk about why emotions can be a pattern out there and then it doesn't come true. Because
it's a forecast.
It makes sense.
Okay, so let's be clear about that. And so just like an economic forecast, look at all the economic forecasters on CNBC or any of these other outlets, they're wrong 70, 80% of the time. Okay, they're wrong 70 or 80% of the time on a narrow band of predictions, which is the economy, which they can apply some math to. I'm doing forecasts in a much broader area. I'm using set theory, which I can get into. And so the forecast, if in any large group of forecasts, half of it came true, then that would mean I would be twice as good as just random chance predictions. Okay, because random chance predictions are about 21% of showing up. The fact that I can even get close to timing is absolutely staggering. Okay, so timing is the real bear here. As you note, there were a bunch of forecasts that are showing up now that had been in our long range data sets, such as the sovereign settlement of debt by the vehicle of Bitcoin, the breakup of the Catholic Church, the degradation of the Democratic Party and its eventual splintering, all different kinds of things that were predicted years ago, that were forecast years ago from the language, that are now showing up. And within some of those sets, there are a number of items that have yet to manifest or will not manifest, and we just can't tell the difference at this point. So the way that I work is that the linguistics and the emotions connect data to each other in a sort of organized fashion in this thing that we call set theory. And so we have a set that includes the forecast for the settlement of debt via cryptocurrencies between nations, meaning the sovereign settlement of debt, one nation to another. That's now manifest. That forecast was maybe 2015, maybe late 2014 it first started showing up. So that long-term set is that it was in, and that long-term set included the the degradation and the arrest of the of people within the Catholic Church for the pedophilia and their crimes, and the eventual breakup and dissolution of the church as an organization, and its prosecution under organized crime acts in any number of countries. Okay, so
we're starting to see
really
that.
Interesting.
I mean, we have a cardinal that went down. People are starting to wake up to what's going on. Yes.
Okay, and here's the interesting part of that. That set, each of these large sets, each of these temporal markers, it has within it a number of smaller sets that also tend to provide the detail. Within the Catholic Church breakup one, there was a set that said that this would occur in a time when money was tight for governments, such that there was a huge motivation once the cracks started to appear in the Catholic Church organization for governments to pursue them as a method of filling their own governmental coffers with what used to be the assets of the Catholic Church in the name of the victims. So there's going to be like a feeding frenzy, which is how it was reported in the data sets, as all of these nations that are struggling for political capital, social capital, and economic capital will decide that's a big dinosaur over there. Let's go carve off our hunk of it. And so there will be prosecutions.
Well, I don't care how it comes about, actually, because if we can get this to stop, I'm happy. But there is a lot of money laundering going on through there, so governments probably deserve a lot of money back. But keep going.
Well, I don't know about deserved, okay? But I'm just saying this will be their motivation.
Let's change the deserve. But yeah, the people. Let's get rid of government.
This will be the motivation.
The people deserve the money back. Okay, go ahead. That's a much better word.
And so the additional qualifiers and quantifiers as to why some of these things are going to occur, and then what is the follow-on to that occurrence. And so the long-term follow-on to that, which we'll be seeing out into 2028 and beyond, will be the ripple effect of this wave moving into other religions. And it'll go all the way through into synagogues. I mean, it's going to go all the way down into, and then it's going to go corporate. And so it's a long-term, I don't want to say truth and reconciliation, but it's a long-term unburdening at a social level of this dark, hidden stuff. And it's going to take us decades to work through. But the interesting part...
And there's a lot of trauma.
Yes.
Are you seeing trauma through this process?
And that's really basically probably what we're doing as a social order in this process of getting it all out in this particular form as is forecast. So we'll see if that forecast manifests. There's a number of temporal markers that go along with that, and we've seen one or two fall. We're starting to see the cracks appear in certain ways within the organizational structure of the religions. And so maybe it's going to be as these other sets had suggested, way back in 2014, 2015. And so we've had a number of other long-term sets that have appeared. One of the major ones was the cross-border debt settlement between a number of nations in Latin America for sovereign debt via Bitcoin. Now, this cannot be overestimated in terms of its impact on us. No matter how big a thing we think it is, we're going to be way too small in our estimation of where this leads, because this is the separation seen back in 2013 of Bitcoin and a few other cryptocurrencies into quasi-officialdom, and then the whole roiling crypto market that is also growing alongside them. Now, the manipulation of the last couple of years, last year, 4 or 5 months or something like that, when they sold off all of the Mt. Gox trustee coins in order to crash the Bitcoin market, is about to come to an end, is in fact ending, because it's not an event, it's a continuing process. It appears, because we're in that set where that Bitcoin sovereign set of or debt settlement had occurred, there's all kinds of other things in there that suggest to me that we're getting back onto previous prediction levels, and that forecast...
Can I rephrase that for a second? And people who don't understand is they're purposely keeping the value of these cryptocurrencies down. And they've run out of their ability to do that, is what you're saying. And
correct.
And now that they don't have that, I've heard this from other people as well, and on air, and we've had some stuff. So now that they don't have that ability, the emotion, the trends, and the stuff that you're reading can actually happen. But they were holding that, and that's a good point, because that shows why sometimes your stuff might not work out, or why trends that you think have all the data there doesn't happen, because there's this element that's keeping it from happening. Okay,
right.
going.
Now, I don't want to start sounding like David Wilcock. Okay, I don't want to get a persecution complex here or anything like that. Right?
Oh, no. I just wanted people to understand that they can't just, and because I've seen a lot of comments. I'm like, well, wait a minute here. This is one more data point, like with your silver. You got to use it as a data point, do all your research, and then if you put all your eggs in that basket, that's not the smartest thing to do. I mean, you got to look at your stuff as another data point. But go ahead.
But in any event, I was going to say, I'm not claiming that, they were trying to suppress due to my forecasts, okay?
Oh, no,
but
no,
the suppression,
no. Yeah.
Right, but my forecasts were in line with, for the first time ever, and it scared the hell out of me back in December of last year, my forecasts were starting to line up with a number of other people, and it's like, okay, this is a little weird, because usually I'm the outlier. Usually I'm the contrarian in that regard. I was too ill at the time to really question myself much further, but there was a need for the suppression of the price at that point, because it could have easily broken, the rise in the price could have easily broken the ability of the powers that be to control the economy at a centralized level. Bear in mind that Bitcoin replaces the Fed. Cryptocurrencies replace the Fed. When that happens, you're going to be living in you're going to be living in sci-fi world as we transit into this new world. We're going to have cryptos take over more and more and more of the role of transactional notation, because that's really what it is. If we think about this one particular way, it makes incredible sense. I'm out in my office and I don't have any bills here, but if you look at a dollar bill, it's not really anything. It's a sheet of paper that is a note in this, and they actually call it that, a Federal Reserve note. Well, if we think of this as that understanding of that word, not as a notation, not as a note of debt, but as a notation of a transaction. That is to say, this is our ledger. When I hand you that dollar bill, that's our ledger, our notation of our particular transaction here, and you keep it. Well, that's basically what we're doing with the cryptocurrencies, only we don't have to muck about with the paper and the ink and all of that business. And so we're just shifting to a greater of our individual transactions, and people should not be surprised that the more efficient is going to win out. Much more efficient to do cryptocurrencies on a global scale than to be passing bits and pieces of paper back.
Well, and isn't it true that it's a lot safer? I mean, no matter who controls the stuff, because right now almost everything's digital anyways, but they are having a hell of a time keeping that safe and secure. And so that's one of the main reasons they want to go to it. I'm being honest, we're already a digital economy.
Correct. And we have been since the early 70s was when they really started pushing automated deposit, ATMs started appearing, this kind of thing. And so that was when the shift really started. And so we actually have to examine these things as a process and not an event. So this was a forecast way back when, 2013 or 2014, that the data had a very large set that said these conditions would occur, and as a result of these conditions, there would be cross-border sovereign settlement of debt, one country settling a debt nationally to another country. And when that occurred, these other temporal markers were more likely to occur at that point, some of which, as I've said, were the issues about the religion and the Catholic Church, pedophilia, money laundering, murder, high crimes, and that kind of thing, right? And then there were other sets that were talking about the generalized nature of the world that would then follow on as the cryptocurrencies took over. And that's when I started labeling it in my head and eventually wrote it this way as sci-fi world. So we're emerging into sci-fi world. This is incredibly great, okay, because there was a dichotomy in the data, which I'll explain something really interesting in a minute, but there were two competing data sets that seemed to exist from like 2003 all the way up to maybe 2009, 2010, and then it started settling out a little bit. But the two competing data sets were basically Mad Max world versus sci-fi world. Would we move into something that was kind of like a cross between Blade Runner and George Jetson, or would we go right into, the abyss of social upheaval and generalized cannibalistic, control of the society? And we've apparently we've shifted into sci-fi world, and we're moving in that way at full speed.
Well, and is it because we're cleaning up the high crimes? I mean, because we can't get into a civilized society of any kind until all those high crimes are starting to be exposed.
No, I would dispute that. I'm sorry. We've always had criminals. We've always had high crimes. We've always had.
No, but
we've
but
had
to the
much
degree
worse
that we
than this,
have,
okay, much worse. Bear in mind that organized
we're just starting to learn
British interest, primarily led by a subset of the British Jewry. So the British state had groups of people within it that formed a economic conspiracy that was coming out of two of the. They weren't allowed to have synagogues at the time, I don't believe, but it was two Jewish religious centers, and that led to the slavery in the United States. Okay, so we moved people from Africa, and where 8 out of 10 died in the process of becoming a profitable item. So huge levels of attrition. So what we've got going on now is truly horrific, but does it compare to slavery that was run for thousands of years? Because bear in mind, the British took over from the Arabs. The Arabs had a thriving slave trade.
Yeah, but let me tell you, we have more slaves today than we had then. So
I agree. Okay, I agree.
But maybe it's because we got more people.
We don't have the same kind of slavery. We don't have the same level of attrition rates.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's not terrible. But did we do the same thing?
No.
Go ahead.
My point is, we had a functioning social order when we had a slave trade where 600 out of 700 people would die on the voyage over, and they would do it as fast as they could. And we had a functioning society then. We had a functioning society when the Arabs were enslaving vast levels of children from the Children Crusade and selling them into Africa and into Asia as slaves for those people there. So no reason that we have to stop and hold everything back and get this idea in our mind that we're not going forward just because these bastards are doing these high crimes.
I'm not saying we have to stop progress. I'm saying that to really get to a civilized society, because we have so many people in our Congress who are compromised, and they will be making decisions that are for the benefit of crimes instead of the benefit of people. So if we ever really want to get to a point where I don't think we're civilized. So if you're saying that we are a organized society in some way and shape and form, then okay. But we're not civilized at this point. If we ever want to get to there's no way you can have that and be civilized. If we ever want to get to a civilized, more mature, evolved society, we have to get rid of that. I mean, my opinion. That's I'm going to lay that out there.
And that's right. And I agree that should always be a goal. I'm just saying that whatever the hell the evil bastards are doing and the crimes they're committing, the social order marches on. Technology marches on.
Absolutely.
Our evolution marches on, right? And to a certain extent, it's the technology and the evolution of the social order that's going to destroy the past, where the past was rigid conspiracies controlled from the top through intimidation and fear. So they're crumbling. A lot has to do with the age of the conspiracies. Note that most conspiracies don't last. Once the people in the conspiracies start dying off, then the whole thing really breaks open usually. So we've got a situation where that sort of thing is going to occur, but it's not going to be a big event. I don't believe in the mass arrest. The information that they're putting out is a misinterpretation, deliberate misinterpretation of the government records. So it doesn't really exist that way. There are no tribunals going on now in the military. Courts martial is something that you can easily look up and understand, and the government has strict rules about what they must report. It's not like the government can have secret trials, and that would be the worst possible thing. And yet you got all these woo guys, and because who had secret trials? The Soviets.
You don't want secret trials.
Right, and they put their great artists and thinkers in the gulags through secret trials.
No, the last thing you want is that.
Yeah.
That's where I agree with
anyway,
Robert David Steele, where he says that, where he talks about everything being transparent. And
yes.
He has a quote, oh, I can't remember it now, but it's awesome. I'll put it there in quotes down below. But forget it. But yeah, I mean, we have to have it be open. Okay, keep going, because this is really interesting. What about the woo-woo stuff?
Okay. So
what do you... Go ahead.
Okay, we'll get to that in just a second. Well,
I want to hear about all these blasts, these magnetic blasts, and what that means.
Okay, well, that's part of the long-term predictions that are now coming true, that were in that original set that had the sovereign settlement and so on, and it was labeled as strange energies from space. And I was talking about strange energies from space from about maybe 2008 onward, because it was a consistent theme in all of the data sets over and over and over again. It just drove me crazy. And because I had to keep repeating it. Excuse me. Anyway, so these strange energies from space in that set were, the set was suggesting around 2012, we would start seeing it appear as language within the media, which it did. And we started having all different kinds of strange effects. I know why this is occurring, and I understand now much more why it's occurring, because I've studied the science of it, and it's now clarified relative to what the sun is doing in its corona. So, okay,
it's happening, because all of January, all of January at midnight, it would be like, bam, we'd get hit. And it was consistently like that except 2 days of the month. And the magnetic is all moving. Go ahead.
Okay, so that's another side set that's got some mystery to it, okay? But in general, we're being hit by 4 different new kinds of energy. This UVC, which is a much higher microwave frequency of the UV, and then we're getting hit by these, I guess you'd have to call them cosmic rays, and then there are these things that are behaving like particles, okay? And these things that are behaving like particles may be the underlying cause of the flashes that the Russian satellites are picking up. You heard about that, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wherever there's a boom in the ground, simultaneously there's a flash going on in the upper ionosphere that's blowing back out in a flash of light that's blowing back out into space. And it may be these particles that are involved in that they've seen coming in. But basically what happens is that in the 50s, the corona of the sun was about twice as large in terms of its effects, and it was yellow, and it was 6,000 degrees Kelvin. And now we're down to where we're having a white sun that's going to shade down to about 3,000 degrees Kelvin, and its corona has shrunk. And because it has shrunk, there's more stuff coming around it to impact the planets which are behind it. And so this is proof positive that we don't have a plate metaphor for our solar system. This is absolute proof positive, if you think about it, that we are not rotating around the equator of the sun at all, but we're trailing behind the sun like debris in a comet's field.
Like our whole universe is going around a central something.
Okay, no, I'm talking about just our solar system. You're correct that's the case with the galaxy and with the universe, but I'm not talking about that. Okay, I'm saying that
I went way big on you. Okay.
Yeah, so within our solar system, we're actually trailing behind the sun as it's moving through the interstellar media at some ungodly amount of speed, like 77,000 miles per minute. Okay, and so because of that, we're actually debris in its wake. So anything that gets around the sun comes back on us. This would not happen if we were circling around the equator in a more or less static sun, like we were, on a plate, because anything that came around the sun would go out the bottom and wouldn't hit any of the planets.
But isn't that true that the solar system is rotating around something?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, isn't that the whole galaxy is moving? So that's why the sun is moving.
It's a comet model all the way up. It's cometary all the way up. Everything looks like a comet when viewed from the correct perspective. And so this proof that we're actually in this kind of a mechanism validates so many other aspects of that, including the expanding Earth, the changes on all the planets relative to climate, why it's occurring as more energy is coming around the sun, impacting all the planets that are trailing behind it. We're all getting heated up because more of the stuff the sun used to burn up is now coming back on us.
Well, how about the theories of the planets and worlds in collision, where we had another thing that came into our solar system, and then Saturn was our sun, and then it went back, and then now our sun is whatever that other comet was. That kind of shows that could be true as well.
No, okay, but I agree.
Why don't you think so?
I agree with the concept that there was indeed. We did capture something. We captured an exoplanet. It is Venus. This was recorded and noted by the Mayans in their tradition, the Mesoamericans, about the capture of Venus. But Saturn was never a sun. We don't, it's a gas giant, okay? Our sun.
So the worlds in collision isn't accurate in your opinion?
No, worlds in collision is accurate in some details, but not in its overall paradigm. Okay, because you can't have our suns. Okay, there's the thing. Worlds in collision was a theory that was promulgated when the paradigm, our understanding of the sun was that it was a bunch of hydrogen collapsed down to a nuclear reactor. It is not. If you collapsed a bunch of hydrogen down to a nuclear reactor, that might sort of look like Saturn if you smushed it a bunch, right? Because it's a bunch of gas. But our sun is not gas. It is a plasma around a highly gigantic metallic ball. Okay, our sun is mostly hematite, gold, silver, other metals. And so we don't have the paradigm that the worlds in collision would allow to exist. So if Saturn were to be our sun, at its core, it's a little tiny thing, and so it wouldn't have worked basically, right? You don't get a nuclear reactor.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, do you believe in the electric universe?
I know it's true because it relates.
Okay, it's just their perfect.
So everything from our health. Our bodies exist. Exist because of electron movement within them. Okay, our brains exist because of electron movement. Everything in the universe is electron movement. Actually, everything is movement that our minds slice and dice into electrons. Okay, just because we cannot really conceive of it at the speeds it's on, which is some of the other forecasts we've got. Anyway, so let's stay on the energies from space, okay?
Okay.
Because
what the heck is happening?
Well,
go ahead.
There's more energies coming our way as part of this process. The sun is shrinking, so more stuff's going to get around it. It'll stabilize around 3,000 degrees Kelvin as we go into the ice age. The Russians have found that we're in a more dense area of interstellar media. It's not a vacuum between the suns. It's this stuff. And it's more dense now, and we're going to be getting hit with more and more of this debris or whatever it is. Now, our data sets that were in that long-term set and that I've looked at recently show that we're going to have that are forecasting some interesting effects from this strange energies from space phenomena. Okay, so over the next 2 years, we're going to shade from white and red energies showing up in our atmosphere over to violet. And when we get to violet, it's going to cause the oceans to change color.
Oh, so you think the oceans are going to change? What color are they going to change to?
They're going to go very deep, sort of wine color again. And it'll have to do with what they're reflecting in the skies. So if they're not pumping chemtrails out, as the violet energies start coming on in, and we get this new ionospheric generalized color, the oceans are going to reflect that, and they'll be less blue and more purpley. So it's not going to be an instant thing, but it'll show up in the language here and there. We'll see instances of, how we've seen instances of water retreating hugely from beaches and this kind of thing, right? And it stays away through 2 tide cycles and then comes back. A very odd occurrence. All of that kind of stuff has slacked off a bit, but the next generation of those kind of changes, the next wave of those changes is just ahead of us in the future, which will culminate or at least include language about the oceans changing color and becoming more wine dark.
It's kind of cool because you're starting to be able to see what these things you didn't understand before, what they might mean. Now, are the chemtrails an attempt to try to keep this stuff from happening?
That would be speculation and conjecture on my part to intent. And knowing the way the military does things, if that was the case, every other compartmentalized program is throwing their own shit in there. So, there might be people trying in a compartmentalized program, indeed trying to keep us from getting impacted by these energies. And then, Bob down the corridor wants to test out and see whether these things can be used to spread bacteria, or,
So
somebody
who
else wants to
knows?
use them as, so who knows? So, it's
Okay.
speculation, and it goes to intent. I don't know what these buggers are thinking of when they're doing this kind of thing. Truly, I have no way of knowing
Okay.
their
Makes sense.
intent, and it seems really stupid to me, right? So I don't really comment on that, but I just thought I
Well,
would
it
point
does.
out.
I mean, if you're doing things that hurt us,
I was
ahead.
just going to point out that we're going to have this violet color change, but that'll on the heels of some very strangely violent energies from space. So I don't know if we're going to get another 2003 event where part of our atmosphere was blown off by this cosmic ray burst that got around the sun, and it caused the Banda Aceh earthquake that killed 300,000 people. I did not get down into detail to be able to tell this kind of thing, because that takes weeks, and I only had about 8 days to prepare here, right, and look at data. So I don't know in many of these things, and I have many questions about it. I'm operating at a very high-level headline kind of a view on this. And so, however, when we had the last kind of this language forecasting strangely violent energies from space, we got 8 months later, we had the Banda Aceh earthquake. So it's just something to bear in mind that these sets are when they say strangely violent energy in space, it may not limit its effects to there.
well, and we're having some strange effects clearly now, or we did all in January, and now there's more stuff happening. So, and your data sets are saying, well, it's not, it's just beginning.
It's coming. Right,
Okay.
It's just coming. It's the camel's nose under the tent. The rest of him is out there, and there's a hump we got to go over, and we can't even see it yet. So this is part of our next, say, 10 years. Let's look at our future in a 10-year band here, because that's what I did on the data. Was I looked at a lot of these things. Okay, so one of the interesting things, woo-woo wise, is a very, very curious thing I've seen. We're going to have, and I'll label it now. So you and I are going to label this, and we'll break this on the planet just the way we broke the C60 story. Okay, this is that big at a science level. I've known about these guys that are two Russians, and I think the other guy's Hindu, that have been doing some work in physics for a long time, and they've been reasonably ridiculed. But my data sets are suggesting at a very high level that these guys, that over these next 10 years, they will be proven correct, and this is in a magnificently twisted, bizarre set of data, but they will be proven correct about something that will establish the paradigm that we will operate under for, say, the next 40, 100, 200 years. I don't know how long it'll last. But so what I'm saying is that we're operating right now in the Western science paradigm that came into birth in the early 1800s. We're about to have a new paradigm become birthed here. Now, this is what I have to explain. It's a little interesting, and I know a great deal about it, but it was curious to see it show up here. But we'll call this the coalescing universe. Okay, that will be the name of this paradigm. Instead of the Western scientific method, we'll say that we're operating under the coalescing universe paradigm. And what that means is that the idea of a multiverse. Okay, so the idea of a multiverse is that you and I are talking now, but maybe before we started talking, I stubbed my toe and got really pissed and decided to cancel the interview. And I would have, at that point, in that making that decision to cancel the interview, created a schism in the universe, and a one multiverse split off, and we're in that other universe where I didn't stub my toe, and so on, right? So the idea of a multiverse is that there's all these every time a decision is made, a new branching universe spins off. This is the current thinking that is behind a lot of the conundrums within string theory and all of these other concepts about how universe works. And it's the multiverse idea, the multidimensional aspect of universe, is really key to a lot of the way that the woo-woo guys see things, and currently a lot of the way that the science guys are starting to see things. However, it's wrong. There is no energetic transfer. There is no multiverse. What actually happens is that there is this collapse of a probability field. So as I go into a situation, again with the interview, it's a few minutes before I'm going to do the interview, and maybe if I could slice and dice time fine enough, I could see myself thinking about a decision after I stub my toe, or I could see myself down in another area making some other decision. And these are all probabilities. Okay, my thoughts may wander between them, and so my thoughts are not necessarily solid, and they may wander between them as I'm moving forward into the future where it coalesces into us actually doing the interview. And that probability field collapses into this manifesting reality. So it's this coalescing universe out of a potentiality of huge amounts of probability into a specific pathway that then starts its own multi-potential phases from that point. Okay.
Well, now let me ask you.
And this,
if this means that because psychics and remote viewers and all these things, that phenomena wouldn't be valid, or it wouldn't be proved to happen, be correct as much as it is, and even your stuff wouldn't be if that whole string theory thing was true.
Correct. And so these guys are going to have some experimental proof of this. Okay, and this will just be a big deal to people like myself who are science wonks. Okay, 15 years from now, it'll underpin all of our education system. It'll underpin how we deal with dozens of things. It'll change medicine, change the social order on so many different levels, and be a real key to getting us world, so to speak, as a species, because of this new way of thinking about how the universe operates at this very key level. What's really interesting about this was that there was this very bizarre set, let me see if I can find it here, that had the strange energies from space, the change in the ocean's color, and then it has all these other interesting, strange things that are going to happen in the near term. So that are in that set, that are quasi linked in emotionally as part of the coalescing universe. And one of them is that we're going to have corporations start to recruit openly, visibly, psychonauts. So they're going to recruit people for the express purpose of taking psychedelic drugs in order to perform work for the corporation while they're under that state.
Because they can be more creative?
I don't know. I think maybe it's because they want them to open up portals and go and talk to other beings. I don't think they're going to be talking about microdosing. I think they're talking about shamanic level because of the other words that are associated within that set. Again, I didn't drill down, so I don't have a lot of detail.
You know what, though? That ties back into what Ken and I were just talking about with remote viewing, because we talked about 7 major discoveries, scientific discoveries, where the scientist says that they got it through, they might not use the word remote viewing, but something to that degree, which could be remote viewing, you know, a dream or something. And that's probably, and he's actually putting together a group to do that with remote viewers. And we're saying, and there's certain substances that get you into that mode, right? And versus somebody who's just naturally can connect.
Sure, and naturally can connect maybe, you know, the raw talent of somebody that if you put him with a coach and he had effective drugs, you know, he could be global or major league, but otherwise he's just a good local player with his raw talent untrained. I would agree that but in any event, what we're talking about here is, you know, I'm not going to name corporations, but, you know, very large companies like, you know, at the level of giant oil companies and these kind of things will be doing the recruitment here. And it was just odd to see it, that we're going to start seeing headhunters.
The reason why I brought that up is because it makes sense, is my point. It's like when you see things that feed into what you're coming up with, that, hey, this could really happen. And more people are open to these ideas because, wait a minute, all these scientists, the Indian guy who was the top mathematician in the world coming up with all this stuff through his dreams, Tesla through his dreams, the periodic table through a dream. I mean, it's crazy what is coming from that. Yes.
Right. But in any event, though, so we will see some of that, and within that set is some very interesting stuff for the breakout of cryptocurrencies versus the dollar. So that's probably about a year away. Okay, so I suspect over the next year, maybe 18 months, we'll start seeing we'll start seeing language about corporations, and they may have to leak it out. I don't know how it'll come out into the public, but they will be setting up psychedelic experimentation for work, as a something to do for work. But we'll also at that stage be shading into where cryptocurrencies are more of a daily thing for a larger percentage of the population. And we may at that stage be back into the projection of how many people will be adopting at what rate. And so we might be back into those days of the big upward bend. And so that's over this next 18 months, but it'll be part of the transition into the sci-fi world. And so we're going to have a huge technological breakout over these next 18 months. Unexpectedly. Okay, so the data is filled with unexpected, out of left field, unaware, unbeknownst, all this kind of language relative to new technologies that will be popping up in various different areas. So some of the big things are going to cause us problems. It may be that it's India. It may be that it's ourselves. I'm not really sure who is going to be the ones that actually knock over the pins here, but somebody's going to put a satellite up and it's going to cause the whole globe a real problem. That'll occur over these next 18 months to 2 years. Unless we do something different and it doesn't happen. But the idea is that we'll shoot a satellite up, and in the process of launching it into near Earth orbit, it'll be hit by a bit of debris, and it will become a bazillion bits of debris that will then go on to hit other satellites, which will hit other satellites and debris, which will hit other satellites, and we won't dare launch anything into space thereafter for years because everything goes up, gets hit by debris. And we'll have to
clean up the atmosphere. Now, what are you hearing about the orbiting, right?
Yeah.
And it's not because there's a lot of junk. They're worried now about the junk in there, but now you're saying it's going to go. Now, what do you think about technocracy? Are you seeing anything in your data sets? Because people are scared about Big Brother with technology. Okay,
so there's good news and there's continuing grumpy kind of news in the sets, okay? The good news from my perspective is that it looks like over these next 10 years, 5G is going to fail and be replaced. And it's going to fail and be replaced in a relatively near term after causing all kinds of problems. Okay, not just problems for humans and other animals, but other technological problems. So we get some stuff in here about 5G being put into place in some cities, and thereafter all kinds of other city gear, like city government kind of bus routing gear, all kinds of software, everything becomes affected by it. And they don't know what's going on, and there's ancillary bleed over the radiation causing degradation on plastics and all different other kinds of things around it. So, well, sort of good. I mean, it's going to cause fires and stuff, but yeah.
Ken Schwartz was saying, we talked about this, and he's like, it's kind of like asbestos, in a very simple way, where people are going to get sick and get cancer, and then there's going to be a lot of lawsuits, and it's going to force it out. Well, you're saying it's even more so than that. It's going to screw up all sorts of stuff. But at a certain point, you almost humans are so short-sighted that you almost have to go through that in order for something not to come through, and you got to protect yourself in the meantime.
You have to protect yourself in the meantime. There are some things you can do. I don't think it's short-sightedness. I think it's whoever is the master of our world has directed that this be done for their own purposes, regardless of its impact on humans. So that's my woo-woo stance. I can't find any economic imperative to do it that would outweigh the huge level of costs. So bear in mind what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a cell system, basically globally in the developed world, that is going to be done in a couple of years, as opposed to the cell structures that took us 30 years to put in place with all kinds of laws and wrangling and so on. And they're attempting to do it in a very short period of time. And the people that are doing it are spending vast amounts of money with no, in my look at it, no return on investment that they can expect to get from it. So a cell tower with 5G on it does not pay for itself.
So what do you think why then? Why are they doing this?
Well, that's intent. See, that goes back to intent.
You have a hard time, yeah.
I have intent there, but it binds my thinking if I worry about why they're doing this. I just need to know what's being done and how I'm going to react to it. Bear in mind, I'm a schizotypical, so I don't necessarily think the way that other people do. My goal in my thinking is to navigate myself with as few problems going forward. It's entirely self-centered and self-serving, and so I don't want to get hung up on why the bad guy is doing it. I just want to knock him out. You know?
The why sometimes helps you figure out other actions. I mean, you can only look at actions, but you gotta like at least hypothesize, I think, on the why, so you can figure out what the hell else is going on. But go ahead.
Here's our problem. Okay, I would agree with that. If I was interacting with Sarah, I would agree with that. Okay, I want to know, why is Sarah doing that? You know, why is she being pissy to me or whatever, right? But when it's large, organizationally, and coming down through a social order, and it's faceless, and there's a distinct anti-human feel to it, then I have to question whether or not it's even a human that's directing this. And if it's not a human and that potential exists, then the why question has to be thrown out, because we don't know how non-humans think. You know, why doesn't an iguana do what it, you know, how does an iguana think? Well, we're projecting anything on there because we're not an iguana. We don't share enough characteristics with the iguana to be able to even comprehend how it might possibly think. And so this kind of thing, I think, leads you down to a potentially dark and dangerous hole from which there is no discovery that you can make that'll make it worth it, right?
Well, and I would agree with you. I think it's very difficult to come to the why. Yeah, but the thing is that the why also tells you what other future actions could be coming. And that's why the why, for me, it's a bigger picture understanding. But of course, it's like another data point. You're clueless as to really what the why could be because it's faceless. I agree with you on that. But I still have to go to the why. It's my character. But go ahead.
Right. I was going to say, I've done risk analysis for years and years and years, and I've learned something that was hard to learn. And that is that in risk analysis, it does not benefit you to know why, because then you're going to project potential other actions, as say in warfare. And this is called feints or deception, and it's frequently used. And so if I think they're doing something because of a particular reason, then they can direct my response based on their knowing what I might think. See, and so I want to analyze things at an entirely different level.
Well, you have to be very objective to the actions and just look at the actions. And if you get to the why, then you can romanticize it, or you can make them as evil as you want to. And so you have to be very careful not to do that.
That's the really thing that bothers me. And what if they're crazy? What if, in fact, it's space aliens? And what if they are so far outside of our understanding that we would essentially think they're crazy in their actions? Then any of our projections as to what they may do next, it's kind of like just a guessing game. Were we right or were we wrong, with no net payoff for us having made that guess?
Yeah.
And,
that's why you have to look at actions and not get too emotionally tied, but I still have to ask the why. Because I'm too curious.
I would like to know, it would help to understand the meaning in universe. But we're going to get getting back to the strange energies from the sun, from space, and all of that. Just a few points to hit here real quick. It looks like there's going to be let me back up a second. 5G is going to be replaced. 5G is going to cause a ton of problems in a short period of time, and is going to generate a level of backlash that the powers that be had not anticipated. And in some instances, I've got some language about 5G being dropped after it had been implemented in some region, to the point where the language is forecasting, rusting 5G towers because they're not being used. So they were put in place and then they're just not being used. But what apparently is going to be replacing it is the idea of the quantum entangled device. So we're going to get the surveillance kind of scenario, the constant data, unlimited bandwidth, all of that kind of thing, but we're not going to get there through cell towers. It's going to be a whole lot cooler in the sense that it's going to be each and every device is going to be entangled with every other device at a quantum level, and there's not going to be any bandwidth, and it's going to be a limitation. It's going to be hugely fast and all of this. And it appears that this will be an implementation possibility within the next 10 years. I have 2028 stuff showing up, like explicit dates showing up relative to these data sets. So, there we go. That might be really cool.
They're going to figure out how really to get to the source.
Well, I actually think
database, if you will. Go ahead.
No, I actually think actually it's not the other way. It's not the source. It's not that. It's going to be in the sense that when we say the source and so on, we think that there might be a data repository there. This is just entirely network. All we're talking about here is not necessarily any understanding of intelligence within that network or anything along those lines, but simply the ability to have a network that is from node to node to node to node entirely distributed, but also quantum entangled, such that there's no need for centralized nodes or routing at that level or these kind of things. There'll still be huge routers, and there'll still be what we might think of as like cell towers, but it's not going to put out radiation the way we do now. Okay.
Well, my thinking is there could be a centralized. It's not centralized. Centralized is not the right word when you're talking about this, but it's instantaneous because they just connect with each other at the.
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
I don't even know what words to use.
Well, it's the quantum entanglement level. It's the electron spin level, right? Okay, and so here's what's going to turn out. That's actually related to the set about the coalescing universe, because it'll be some of those experiments that will spill out of that understanding, that will help the technology people put this together. But according to what the data sets are talking about, we'll be able to get three, I guess you'd have to say, channels within each quantum entanglement. So we could have a conversation on one channel, back and forth, unlimited bandwidth. We could have another channel that monitored how long we were doing that conversation. What we might think of as in the cell phone business is the billing channel that would know, which nodes you went through and this kind of thing. And then we're going to have a totally new channel that we don't even have any use for at this stage, also unlimited bandwidth, because of what they're going to discover about quantum entanglement. And it's apparently going to be real cheap. It's going to be a huge boon to the telephony industry, and there's going to be a whole new technology rush as everybody rushes out to, can the old clunker phones and get these new devices. And it'll make wearable computing and see, imagine this. Imagine Google Glasses without having the radiation beamed into your head from the fact that you're wearing a cell phone over your eyes, right? And that's really what Google Glasses were. So imagine being able to do that with no radiation hazard. Then it seriously opens up the world to us humans relative to communication, relative to being able to have heads-up displays that I'd look at this tree, for instance, it would tell me, oh, that's a spruce native to these areas, and as much detail as I might want. Those kind of things.
It'll change our world. Now, could we instantaneously communicate to people on Mars?
Sure. There would be no limitation whatsoever.
It changes our whole deal. Yeah, we can instantaneously communicate across the universe.
Right, and you don't need satellites. You don't need much. You need some infrastructure. I'm not saying it's not going to exist this way, but you don't need the scatter it all about kind of infrastructure that we have now with the cell towers and big investments in steel everywhere and these kind of things. So it's going to be an entirely different sort of a connection. Now, the data sets don't actually call it, it calls it quantum entanglement in the data sets, but it doesn't call it a cell phone. And so it may be that it's moving into clothing, or it may be that it's a little communicator device and we'll call it something different. But it's going to be a very large transition. It'll occur such that by 2028, the data sets are saying that it's out there being sold, that you'll be able to buy these things in 2028 and have cell phone freedom. No more carrier. You won't have to have Verizon or some of these companies that, pass your data back and forth. Governments won't like this.
Wow, that's a pretty amazing out-of-the-box idea. And timing
encrypted.
Again. Go ahead.
I say it's also 100% encrypted. No one could ever spy on it.
Very cool.
Doesn't use IP addresses. Yeah.
So are you seeing anything now? Technocracy could go crazy at that point.
Exactly,
How will we,
exactly. And we're going to
you
need it. We're
know,
going to need it though too, because we're going to be in a huge level of earth changes that are going to cause a lot of infrastructure replacement to be necessary.
see,
Okay,
technocracy is one of those good and bad things. You know what I mean? It's like
like
it's good
government,
if the
yeah,
people are doing it and have good thoughts. If the people who are doing it are bad guys, then we're hosed.
right, right. If you have basically, if you have a stand-up, upstanding human, you got no problems.
Yeah, it's a
Doesn't
way
matter where you
better.
slot them in, right? Exactly. But we have a system that's set up to reward the psychopaths, and
I
they
know.
make the most of it, and so on. And if you're if you're running a corporation, the best thing you can do is hire a sociopath or a psychopath as a manager, because they don't give a rat's ass about what the people underneath them think or feel, and so they're going to just go for the corporate mantra and so on. Now, apparently, our social order is changing, becoming more distributed, less hierarchically based, and these kind of things. And we're going to see large social order changes over these next few years as well. Um, Let me get into some of the other things here in that one data set, though. In the deal about the corporations recruiting the psychonauts and the cryptocurrencies and the shift into more cryptos about 18 months out, we also have some others that are saying about 18 months out, over these next 18 months, we're going to see the collapse of some compartmentalized secret programs. And the reason we're going to see the collapse, it's just kind of goofy in the data sets. They're suggesting that we're going to see the collapse of some of the compartmentalized programs because they'll be superseded by open source or commercially available kind of things. So in other words, you may have some guy who's working in a hole in the ground for the government or a government contractor, and then some kid in Maine starts up a new company to do exactly what that guy's doing and does it from his own idea, and it's out and about before the government can shut it down. Those kind of things are going to occur as the technology combinoric explosion begins.
And which we're at the beginnings of that anyways. The technology explosion is here. It just now you're saying at that point it's gonna start hitting us as a population.
It's going to start hitting us. Well, it's hitting us now as a population. I mean, look, we're all starting to debate 5G. 2 years ago, did anybody even know what the hell it was, right? So, and it's now starting to hit the mainstream. They've got to start defending it. So the technology explosion is happening in shorter and shorter and shorter time periods, and we'll have decisions made quicker and quicker as we get closer to these crises point. Unfortunately, some of these decisions are made by people that have an intent we can't fathom, and we're going to have to go through the problems that 5G and some of these things are going to cause, which is, one of the reasons to really look at humans and our health and so on. So I've got a bunch of other notes here. I don't know how long to keep you with this, but
this is so fascinating.
I haven't looked at data.
We could keep going. I want to get into a couple other topics, but go ahead.
I haven't looked at data in a long time, so it was fascinating to me too. Some of the longer term sets I'd had that were showing up are showing up with more detail now. They've got more emotional impetus behind them, so I think they'll be appearing in the next 18 months or so. We're going to have a huge crisis in what we think of as the Nation of Islam, not the nation here in the United States, but the pan-global Islam, right? Islam is going to be in crisis, there's going to be warfare, and we're going to finally start seeing the attacks on Saudi Arabia that will ultimately lead in the destruction of Mecca.
Now, is the Islam problems maybe a continuation of the church problems we're going to have here, all the different religions? It's just another religion that's going to have the same explosion.
It's not. No, the religion, the data sets are not looking at it. They're not presenting data the same way as the Catholic Church and so on. Okay.
Okay.
The other churches, the Western churches, are showing as being corroded out from the inside. Islam is going to split hard, and there's going to be intense fighting after the split. And the data sets that I've had since, I'd have to go back and look when it first appeared. Maybe it was 2005. But we'll see attacks that will destroy Mecca. So, so boy, what is Islam without Mecca, right? So this kind of stuff is coming up to us. We're going to have more of those fast radio bursts. We're also going to start seeing what are going to be called light signals, where it appears as though there's some kind of transmission coming in the form of pulse light that we're able to intercept. I don't think it's aimed at us. It doesn't appear that way in the data sets. Going to have huge Earth changes, giant Earth changes, some of which are going to manifest in the next few weeks, as we're going to have like some glaciers that are going to split off of Antarctica and are going to cause other problems because they're no longer there blocking these larger glaciers. And so Antarctica over these next 10 years is going to become the new technological center of the planet. In terms of all of the technology companies from every country are going to be rushing and fighting and scrapping to get at Antarctica for resources and all the other stuff that's found there as the ice and things shift off. There's also going to be in the data sets a push beyond the economic, but a real sense of species desperation as we get into the ice age. We need to understand what's going on, and so much of it is that understanding is locked up at the moment in Antarctica. So as part of the ice age stuff, the Earth changes, which are also solar system wide, we're going to see new glaciers. Probably not this year. It'll probably be summer of 2020. We'll see snow and glaciation form in summer in Northern Hemisphere in 2020.
So when do you think you'll see 2020? Now, will there be parts of the world that'll still be really nice and sunny and 85 degrees, like at the equator, or is it going to be kind of worldwide, the cool down?
No, the cool is going to be worldwide, and the equator is going to cool down, but not to the extent of the northern and southern hemispheres. So yeah, you can still go to your your vacation in Bali. It's just that you won't find a lot of 85-degree days. It'll be more like 80-degree days. You'll note that in my area around here, we have not had a 95-degree day summer in probably 7 years. And we used to have
Where are you?
In the Northwest in Washington State. And we used to have a bunch of those. Right? And so it's not that the heat goes away. It's just that it's going to be, okay, so here's really the climate change we're going to have is like a dog with mange, all right? The hair is going to fall out in bits and pieces all over, but the dog doesn't go totally bald. And where the hair is going to fall out is going to be very irregular. So I'm actually anticipating being able to look. I'm going to look this summer, but I don't think it'll occur. But I'm going to look next summer in the Northern Hemisphere for where it is snowing in June, July, and August. Because that's going to be the center of the next large ice mass. It may happen in North America, or it may happen in Central Eurasia, the stands, right? Kazakhstan and those kind of areas. It'll be one of those two areas, though. All right, it won't. There's not much likelihood it'll be anywhere else. There will be corresponding glaciation periods in the Southern Hemisphere as well, and they'll happen in that summer of late 2020 in Australia and so on. So at that stage, we'll know, and it's like, okay, if it happens in the Midwest, if we've got, or in Appalachia or on the Rockies or the Tetons, if we've got a glacier forming in next June, then we'll be able to say, okay, this is going to be the center of the largest glacier of this next ice age. And people can thereafter start making some plans. Because if you've got a glacier that's starting to form and you're 20 miles away from it, well, 3 years from now, maybe you'll only be a half a mile away from it. You've got to start thinking about moving.
So the whole global warming will go away. That whole narrative.
Oh, yeah.
They're already changing it now to climate change anyways, because they're going to look stupid.
Yeah. And you'll note, by the way, they never show you any data from prior to 1960. The reason that they don't was because of the catastrophic occurrences in 1957 and 1958 that caused the global geophysical year to occur that put the kibosh then, and everybody knew then in 57 and 58 we were going into an ice age. Now they just show you back to 60 because it's been a relatively warm period since 1960. But if you look at the data, we're on a long-term downward cold trend. And these are just little blips as you go along.
Yeah, it's I've seen that too. When you look over 100 years ago, you can really tell the difference. Yeah. Now, what are you seeing with some of the disclosure events with, the whole woo-woo world?
Okay, so there's all kinds of stuff about disclosure. There's all kinds of stuff about the disruption of the woo-woo community, if you want to call them that, and the crazy aliens showing up. Uh, and I have all kinds of stuff, like the collapse of the compartmentalized secret programs going on that busts out scientists. It'll be very much like the Soviets, where when the Soviet Union collapsed, the Russian and Siberian scientists had to get work, so they went on out and did stuff that had been secret, just weeks before, but they were just doing it for corporations.
Is that an indication that you think the United States is going to collapse?
No.
Okay.
But the structure, no, I actually don't have data sets now that are growing or have grown in this past year that would suggest that we're going to split up the way Russia split up into various different countries.
Okay.
There's nothing showing up in the data for that, at least in these next 10 years. But there's vast levels of political and economic chaos. Okay.
Yeah, well, and that's happening now.
Right. But you're actually going to get to the point where you're going to have this last-ditch effort, sort of last stand at the Alamo with some very violent people trying to force their view of authoritarianism on the rest of us. And it's not going to be very nice. We'll get through it because basically the world's changing under their feet, and the political trichotomies of the past decades, socialism, communism, and capitalism, are fundamentally going to change because the environment that allowed them to exist won't exist anymore. In other words, would Russia have had the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, which took over from the People's Revolution? Would that have occurred if Russia was in the midst of a generalized, widespread environmental chaos rather than simply economic and famine, right?
So they can't kill, they're not going to be able to kill 100 million Christians, for example, like they did in the past. Correct.
It's going to be awful hard to do those kind of things.
Or at least in the fashion they did it.
Right. And there's also now, okay, so you've got atrocities committed in the past. The people that committed the atrocities always had the potential for escape from their crimes. Some thinking in the back of their mind that there would be some place on the planet they could to live without being hassled as a criminal for that. That idea is simply really disappearing anywhere anymore. The ability for all of us, especially in a digital, track down everybody else's crimes and keep going on it, is going to really take away that idea that there's any form of surcease or release from your particular level of criminality. And not that people won't be criminal, but we're not going to see the Idi Amin kind of thing anymore, right? With the idea that he could go off and live in London after slaughtering people in Africa.
That's good. That's an evolution of humanity, as far as I'm concerned.
I think so as well. I think so, but it's the technology that allows that to occur. Mm-hmm. Without this instant technology globally, you could still get on a boat, sail off somewhere. No one would ever know who the hell you are, and you could live as you choose, right? So, but because we now have the ability to communicate globally, and imagine what's going to happen once we get to the point where we have, no bandwidth restrictions on our communication devices, and costs are just going to drop. So anyway, Antarctica, we've got over the next 2 years, we've got what I'm titling The Great Change. That'll be followed by the Years of Excitement. And that'll be excitement at both a popular level and a scientific level. And then the other one is going to be the breakout news, when finally enough of Antarctica has shifted climate-wise that it's now the governments can't control it anymore, and corporations and people and stuff start piling in to see what the hell's there.
Because once we learn what's at Antarctica, that's going to disclose a lot of our past.
And who knows how much.
And we'll learn, because there's so much of our history.
Yeah, so it's a major deal. It was a huge set of temporal markers. I mean, I must have a dozen or more. Cross-connected to that set are some sets saying we're going to have lawsuits and problems within the western part of the world as people built food. Okay, that's how it comes out in the data. So we're probably talking about like a Star Trek replicator kind of a technology that could make you a steak dinner out of the air kind of a deal, right? Only initially, and it'll come out of Antarctica. It's associated with Antarctica. It's within that set.
It makes sense, so we could do it.
Yeah, and initially out of that, though, we're going to do it badly.
We're going to
So people
suck at
better
it,
watch
and then
out.
we're going to hurt people.
First generation is not going to be good.
Yeah, that makes sense. All that makes sense.
Independent of that, we're going to get there's a forecast for a discovery in camera optics, okay? Some new way of doing camera optics that will shade us back towards analog, less into the digital world. But the beauty of it is that these camera optics are going to be able to, it'll be the ability to have a shutter speed of maybe a billionth of a second. I mean, just incredibly fast, right? So it'll go open up all different kinds of stuff for science. It'll eventually come down to where it'll be fitting into your new entrained device. But even better than that is that they're going to be able to have a wearable device that will augment people's vision, especially blind people. I don't have any details. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't think it's going to be implanted. It appears to just be wearable.
Well, they already have, I've done some research on that, and they already have the ability to implant directly into your brain vision. So if you have a camera on Mars, you can put it into your brain and make it look like you're seeing it yourself at Mars. That's been around for a while, and so they're probably perfecting it.
Yeah, and this is basically talking about a commercialized ability to have this, and it doesn't require that you have any wires or anything in your brain, apparently. So it's either beaming it in or there's some other skin contact.
Wow.
And see, this tied in. This comes out, the eyes business comes out with a new emphasis in our biomedical thinking about humans on skin, so that the skin will start being used with how you have the thermometers that you can just wave in front of the stove and you pick it up digitally and it tells you the temperature. We're going to have these things that will image your skin at levels to be able to tell you pulse, oxygen, endocrine balance, all different kinds of things in a little handheld device, very much like Star Trek with their little tricorder thing, right? And it actually is going to work off of the skin because the data set is all keyed into the idea of the skin as delivery mechanism. So you won't be popping pills. It'll be some greater level of nano-penetrating kind of stuff. So almost anything you need to, almost anything you're going to need to do to the human body in terms of introducing chemicals into it will be able to be done through transdermal patches.
And they're starting to be able to do that now they're starting to figure that out with the plasma energy and directly putting it into the nano, I don't even know the language, but at the atomic level. Directly feed into that real base level of the minerals that you need.
Okay, all right. Okay, so you're talking about the Keisha stuff.
I know Keisha is very controversial, and that he isn't... There's a lot more research beyond him, and I realize that he's putting out.
But I haven't seen any reproducible results from any of the material that used Keisha as a base.
Okay, so you don't believe any of the stuff that he has is legitimate? No,
it's just like the Bashar stuff. There were a lot of people that were working on that weird energy device that Bashar, the space alien, told to Daryl Anka, and nobody's ever been able to do anything with it. There's been maybe, I don't know how many millions of dollars invested in Keisha material, and no one's been able to reproduce any of the results. The GAN stuff has not been able to prove out, and so there's no there.
I have done some interviews with people who are doing experiments on farms and stuff with radishes and all sorts of stuff where they're seeing.
Okay, but that's different. That's different because see, it's the same thing. The biggest problem right now for pharmaceutical companies is the placebo effect. 30% of people that get terminal disease heal themselves if given a sugar pill.
I understand that, but how do you explain radishes that last 6 months when they should deteriorate at two weeks?
Okay, that's first off, I'd have to see the evidence that it actually occurred. All right,
and true.
Okay, and then you're making an assumption that it would deteriorate in 2 weeks because I've had radishes and root cellars last a whole year. Go through a whole season, right? Potatoes.
That makes sense. So you have to make sure that the science behind what they're doing is legit. But
correct.
I've talked to people that are doing it now. It could be BS, but because until I agree, it's all, I bring so many people on the cutting edge that some of my stuff that I have on is going to be BS. I mean, I'm sorry, but if I'm working on the cutting edge with people
not necessarily
in science, there's going to be BS. But there is a concept that I get and I think is right, that you can feed us at the atomic level the actual core stuff that we need. It makes sense to me.
Okay, so that's something we need to discuss at when talking about the health stuff. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so when we go into that, we can get into it in detail.
Does that make sense to you?
The concept is sound. The concept is sound.
Thank you.
It is not.
Yes.
But at this stage, there's no one able to do it in practice.
Okay. Or they haven't really figured it out, or it's hit and miss, and they don't even know why they're doing it, or whatever.
Well, there's another aspect of this, and that is the consciousness is involved. Ergo, the observer effect comes into it. Ergo,
that's fair.
One third of the results will, even if you had 100 people do it and 30 of them showed that they could do it, how much of that is due to their consciousness being different than the other
that's
70
fair.
people?
We know that. Yeah, we know that consciousness.
And so you wouldn't be able to reproduce their results because you're not them. And they don't separate out that aspect of it. They don't come down to a protocol and give it to somebody, step back and see if the protocol works without them involved. And that would be something, especially, this goes back to the coalescing universe issue. The universe, okay, the hidden aspect of that idea that these people are working on right now is this idea that universe favors success. We have sayings, okay, chance favors right. That's a sound way to live your life. If you educate yourself, then there's fewer things out there that you're unaware of. Therefore, you're going to make fewer mistakes. All right. But here's a further wrinkle to that that's real woo-woo. What if I make a good decision today and I find that it's easier for me to make another good decision later today? And so on and so on. And it starts snowballing. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting on top of a huge level of popularity, vast quantities of money, women are falling at my feet, all of these kind of things, right? And it's all because one good presents an opportunity for me to make another one, because it is cooperating in coalescing the probability fields. So if universe finds that lots of us humans want to go and slaughter lots of other humans, then it presents the collapse of the probability field to favor Nazism, the rise of civil war and destruction.
Oh yeah, it's the culture that it generates, because
this is the law of attraction.
It's like the habits. Well, it's habits. It's like when you're coaching. I coached for a long time. Continual good habits tend to create better luck, or it's not even luck. You're creating a better circumstance for yourself. Okay. And like the drug culture, bad things all are around that, because you make bad decisions and bad people come, and it just all attracts each other.
Correct. And it's because universe favors the production of energy and follows energy, and energy harmonizes with other energy and draws in more energy at all different kinds of levels. And so it's an electrical universe from the fingertip all the way out into the whole universe. And the electrical universe, we're going to start figuring out some of the properties that allow us to harmonize with the laws that universe has and recognize.
Which is perfect.
Exactly. And so
that's evolution. That's what we
real
need to
evolution.
Do. Yes.
And this is coming over the next 10 years as this coalescing universe theory gets out and about with whatever experiment they're going to have is just going to blow the socks off of the science community. People's eyes are just going to, whoa, because it won't be ambiguous at all. It'll be, we'll be able to make declaratives that could be backed up in court, so to speak, right?
It'll be clear,
so really,
they'll have the science behind it. And that's what the problem is now, is it's more idea-based without, we are working on getting the science behind it. Now, let me ask you, with the technology becoming so advanced, are we going to have people having a hard time being in virtual reality environments and just be stuck there?
Sure. No question.
I mean, they're already starting to get to that point, but it will be bad once you feel like once you're a real avatar.
Well,
you can feel it
it's
in
going to
your
get
skin,
even worse
you can see
as we get into these devices with the unlimited bandwidth.
That's what I'm saying.
Because they'll be able to power so much more with so little energy and get so much more of that virtual reality into you.
Well, how about when you can, and they already have super realistic holograms. Now, let's say that you can feed your brain, however they do it, so that you, like when you can see Mars, but it's as if it's coming from your same eyes. Now, next thing you know, you're in a virtual reality where it feels like it's coming from your own eyes. And you also have some kind of suit that makes it feel like you feel heat, you feel touch, you feel all these things.
They won't have to
how
use
can you
suits.
separate your brain from virtual reality versus reality? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. They won't have to use suits. They'll use electromagnetic radiation that'll just make the nerve pop up where
yes, perfect.
Yeah, so the room does it, sort of the holodeck approach. But here's the thing. My data suggests that we will go through that. We'll have to deal with it the same way we have to deal with opiates, that kind of thing. Some subset of the population is going to be hugely addicted to it, but also that people are going to reject it, that there's going to be this counter move towards something that I hesitate to even get into because it's going to sound so weird, but it's going to be a move towards authentic human existence. And we'll see all different kinds of results of that. So you'll see people that will go off and decide to form their own tribe and live in teepees.
Perfect sense.
You'll see, right, and you'll see people that are going to try and create islands where they can get in contact and all of this. Because even with the feeling and the sensation and all of that, you'll know it's fake. And so there will be this, you'll know it's put on for you. You'll know it's entertainment. So there'll be an elevation of our abilities as humans to differentiate between the reality that is presented to us and also thus the control systems. So VR in that sense, and the period of time where we have to deal with the VR addicts who are going to be a real problem. I mean, just a huge problem, killing people, all different kinds of things. Not deliberately, but just inadvertently kind of stuff, right? But once we get into that period of time there, we're going to get back to a different understanding of what it means to be human. And that's where we have all of these other subsets that come on in about, the...
Well, hold on one second.
Yeah.
The key is for us to be able to mentally distinguish that difference. Otherwise, we're screwed.
That's why, okay, and so this is why the sets that presented the idea of government or of corporations hunting for psychonauts, I found to be so intriguing, because these form, if you will, the loophole, the way out, the trap door to technocracy and this kind of thing. We're going to discover that, okay, so let me put it to you this way. We've got kids now that are forming tribes online, and they're doing these multi-player games, sometimes with thousands of people playing, right?
Yep.
That virtual reality is going to continue and continue and continue to grow. It'll get more and more tightly knit, more, quote, real in terms of its presentation to us. But along at, and the people that will be doing this and become very much famous, very wealthy from doing it very well, will form an interest pyramid.
Hold on. You cut out there for a second. So you said the people introducing it, and then you cut out.
Okay, so the people that are going to be the top dog gamers are going to form an attention draw, an attention magnet. And they're going to draw lots of other people's attention that want to emulate them. And so a lot of people will go into the gaming. But the data sets are suggesting that that's just a natural outgrowth of where we're at now, and there's a radical change about to hit our society in the form of these psychonauts. There's going to be a burgeoning subculture, corporate, paid, a lot of money in it, a lot of wealth, new creations coming out of these psychonaut journeys, such that that's where the excitement's going to be, that's where the draw is going to be, to the point that the corporations have to go to the trouble of having very strict guidelines as to who they hire, because they're going to hire some people that never should have taken the trips. But So there's going to be problems with this, right? There's going to be problems as it goes.
Well, they're gonna be bad at it at first.
Correct.
We always are.
Correct. But the engagement and what comes out of it, the staggering scientific outcomes and so on, is going to be so attractive that the gaming world is going to find it hard to compete. And this is like the ultimate real. So ultimate gaming, VR, it's virtual reality. I want to go psychonautic reality and get into that which is ultimately real and enhances my life as I go through it. So there's going to be a lot of different changes relative to health. The data sets are still showing like the med beds, the light therapies getting better and better and better and better as we go on. So
we did a show on that.
Yeah, so there's all different kinds of stuff coming out there and just basically incrementally getting better. I think that's really there's many, many, many temporal markers I've made notes of. Big things in May and June are going to show up news for cryptocurrencies, probably economic issues that'll drive it. And I guess that's
it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and that's just about it for this. So you want
How interesting. Thank you. This has been really fascinating. I want to get into, well, we got to have you back as you can dive into this more. And are you going to be selling these again? I mean, this
no,
is,
see, here's
is this just
thing.
more?
I did this for you, okay? This is a present for Sarah. But it takes a lot of effort to do. And to go to the next level would require maybe another 10 or 12 days of really intense work at the level of probably 8 to 12 hours a day. And I'm battling cancer, so I'm not going to divert my energies that way, right? It's like I don't mind being being able to do this at some small level because I want to know myself. I want to be able to guide things over the next few months, right? But I can't.
It's a present for you too.
Right. It's very important for me to keep on track of it, and I've been modifying my algorithms and refining as I go along. But I'm not putting a lot of energy into it because I got to get myself healthy.
Yes, you do. Yeah, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the cancer. And I know I wanted to introduce you to Ian Mitchell and his work. They're working with dogs, so you're not a dog, unfortunately. And they're working.
No, but I've had a lot of dogs die of cancer, and I'm taking active steps now. So
that's awful, and maybe you can get your vet involved because it doesn't cost anything. I mean, this is a free trial. Which is amazing. But his stuff stops metastasis, and they're figuring out, they're working on the protocols, and they're trying to get it, they have to be in keto, which I actually hooked up Phil and Max because they're working on something to get people in keto within 30 minutes. So he's rethinking kind of some of the protocols of just forcing people or dogs into keto. Because what happens is people feel bad for their dog because they're sick, and then they give them a treat, and then it screws up everything. Right. So they're realizing that, okay, there's a lot of things that are screwing things up here. And so they're really working on refining their protocols and getting people to clearly understand why we have to do all this stuff. But nobody has seen the kind of results, from stopping metastasis. And they have university studies. It's not a bunch of bogus crap, and they have real doctors, veterinarians, and it's a whole network of people that are working on it. I'm so proud of what they're doing.
I use the products with my guys, though, too, right now. So, and I've introduced my local vet way out here in Podunk, Washington, and got them in contact with the live pet guys with Ian.
You did? Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. So they're connected.
They are connected, and they're working with
I haven't talked. It was like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, good. Oh, good. Okay. Because, like I said, I've never seen anything, and I've been doing a lot of study. I know that cancer, if you catch it way ahead of time and you build up your immune system, there's a way to beat it. But once you're to a point where it's aggressive, you're kind of screwed. I don't know, but you're doing the research. You know way more than me, and I should shut up.
I'm doing the research because it's going to keep me alive, right? I just literally half an hour before we began our conversation, I fired my oncologist. The reason I fired him was because his protocol makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I checked with the people in his organization, and he is bound by that protocol. And the protocol says we can't treat any cancer we can't see. So we're going to let those random cancer cells within you find some place to lodge and grow large enough until we can image them. Then we're going to have disfiguring surgery and dose you with chemo and radiation. And it's like, no, thank you, not doing that. I'm not taking that approach.
It's a real primal, cutting people out, just cutting things out is real primitive.
And it's okay in my case, right? I'm one of the people, okay, so I had a very large cancerous mass in my colon, very large, 2 inches by 2 inches by inch and a half. It was causing an obstructional blockage, or an intestinal blockage, and it was maybe been in me growing 30 years. Who knows? Okay, long slope, and no metastasization. Probably because throughout that entire 30 years, I was taking almost marginally adequate bare minimum levels of vitamins and supplements that caused the body to be able to stop the hormonal attack that the cancers have. So here's the thing. Cancer feeds on sugar. Okay, so when you take a grain of sugar, you get 36 ATP production values out of it in terms of energy. But if that single grain of sugar goes to a cancer cell, you get 2 ATP production values of energy out of it, and the 34 other production values go into making more cancer cells. And so sugar feeds cancer. So that's why the ketosis, that's why starving to a certain extent. But it's more complex than that, and you have to approach it, in my opinion, from a multifaceted view. So cancer exists because a single cell goes rogue. And what would go rogue and what you might want to do there. But let's just assume at this point, I have to assume I'm going to create cancer cells from now on because I've created them in the past. Whatever was in me created cancer. It's not a single time event.
Well, we're all creating cancer, right? It's just our body deals with it, and yours decided it wasn't going to anymore.
Right.
Okay.
And here's the thing. Cancer as a problem used to, in the 1920s, was restricted to 1 in 20 people presented with cancer, 1 in 47 people presented with the kind of cancer I have. Now it's 1 in 3. So in 100,
it's terrible.
In 100 years, we've gone to that level. In 20 years, it's estimated it'll be 1 in 1. In 20 years, it's estimated that everybody will get a presentable cancer that will be a health issue. Now, here's the thing about cancer. Regardless of what its cause is, from that point on, certain things are predictable. Cancer is going to be a loose cell that will want to attach to some organ within your body and proliferate from there. And it does this by going through the cells, through the intercellular wall, through the release of certain hormones that neutralize defensive parts of your body, such that cancer cell can slip through and attach to something. If you have very tough intercellular cement, it's harder for the cancer cells to do that. So one thing that makes sense is to boost yourself full of vitamin C beyond your understanding, because vitamin C is the thing that makes that intercellular cement tough. So lots of vitamin C helps you out. So that's one aspect you can use to prevent the cancers from spreading and proliferating. It's not a cure. It can be used at very high doses to treat cancer under certain conditions. But, okay, so then if you can help that, then you've got that aspect of it going for you. There's another aspect of dealing with cancer, though. Radiation is not, in my mind, radiation doesn't make any sense, okay? The reason that we have radiation as even a treatment is because Madame Curie in 1920 said she could cure any cancer with X-rays. The words got out and no one ever double checked on it, and she died of aplastic anemia from too much exposure to X-rays, and we know that radiation kills you and causes cancer. We also know statistically that if you look at all of the studies that they do for the American Medical Association, National Institute of Health, radiation shrinks the tumor, but as soon as you stop the radiation, it comes back even fiercer. So radiation is...
And you kill your immune system. You kill the very mechanism for your body to fight it.
That's what I'm doing. Sorry, is that I'm boosting my immune system. So I've come across this stuff, okay? All right, so I'm boosting my immune system through the idea of doing optimal vitamin loading. So I try and keep vitamin C at about 2,500 micrograms a day actually being absorbed by my blood, maxed out on my vitamin B and vitamin E, et cetera, in different respects relative to the cancer. But there's something else I'm doing, and that is immunotherapy. We seem to be losing connection here a bit. But anyway, so immunotherapy is having my body attack the cancer, which it wants to do. The thing about this is that there's a substance out there that is in you right now, and it's in me. It's even in dogs and cats. The substance is called GCMAF, okay, for glyco. It's a glyco macro activating factor, okay? And what this stuff does, GCMAF, is that it's a template, if you will. It's a signal that attaches to a macrophage, which is this hunter-killer cell in you. This little thing attaches to that macrophage, and thereafter that macrophage wants to go and kill cancer cells. That's all its goal. That's all its goal is. And you create these, but the cancer cells are really smart and they kill them. They kill your GCMAFs and they're so targeted that they kill it at its most vulnerable point, 420 atoms down on this chain, and it kills it. So what you need to do is you need to replace these GCMAF in your system if you have cancer, and basically flood your body with GCMAFs to get the cancer cells all killed, and then you can keep them in control, so to speak, right? You'll still produce them. I'll still have epigenetic conditions that produce the cancer cells. But if I kill all of the existing ones and keep up this regimen and boost my immune system, I can use immunotherapy as an anti-cancer approach. My oncologist was not willing to do this. My oncologist never said anything about vitamins, never said anything about nutrition, never said that cancer was fed by sugar, never went into any of this stuff.
The scientists at LivePet are hard at work solving our cancer epidemic. They have the most promising cancer trials going on now with pet clinics around the country that I have ever seen. You can see the promising cancer research and trials going on some of the past shows that I've done. The links are below. While working with C60 and other ingredients, these talented scientists developed a hair growth serum that really works. They sat on it for years. After all, cancer is their focus. But they now realize how much the profits from this product could really help their cancer research. So the C360 hair growth product was launched. C360 hair growth is specifically designed to revive your hair growth by targeting hair follicles and restarting your hair growth cycle. C60, the active ingredient in C360 hair growth, reactivates hair follicles that have stalled due to hereditary hair loss, physical conditions, or environmental factors that may affect follicle production. You will begin to see visible results using C360 hair growth within 3 to 6 weeks. Buy today knowing that your future hair growth will help fund very promising cancer research. See more at the link below.
Yeah, you got to get rid of. Are you on
No.
keto? Because you have to. You don't, because keto, it means you're not having any sugar.
Well, no, I'm not having any sugar. Correct. Okay, but I'm not trying to.
Okay, so you're not doing the full-blown keto diet, but you're at least starving yourself of sugar.
Correct.
You're starving the cancer cells of sugar, which is
right,
important.
and I'm gluten intolerant, which was good for me because it made me switch over to buckwheat and other very slow digested carbs. Okay, so it's good in that sense as well. But here's the thing: the GCMAF is not a silver bullet. It's been tested on 33 cancers, including stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and it cures. It cures. It doesn't beat it down and this kind of thing. People on GCMAF in sufficient quantities have passed colon cancers, like excreted them. They have become detached from the colon and have actually left their body, sometimes under near fatal conditions because they were so large that caused intestinal blockages. Mine was so large it almost killed me. And it would have been impossible for me to pass it. It was that large. But now, had I known, if I put in GCMAF ahead of the surgery, I would have been so much better because it would have killed all the random cancer cells and they would have gone along with it all. So, and here's the thing about GCMAF. Every time that a clinic pops up that produces this and gets it into the hand of doctors, the clinic is raided and shut down and some of the doctors are killed. Oh. This is happening in Europe.
What a bunch of assholes. I'm sorry. It's
happening in Europe. It's happening in all around the planet. The only place I'm aware that it is not happening is in China. The Chinese government apparently doesn't care much about it. The Indian government, on the other hand, seems to be cooperating with Monsanto, why they're involved, I don't know. Other than maybe they're they don't want the glyphosate to be neutralized by this. That maybe they want to cause cancer, for all I know. But in any event, in India, they're working to suppress this as well. But there's not much of an infrastructure for it there. But here's the good thing. These GCMAFs, these macrophage activating factors, are in us now, and it's possible to get more of them in us through doing various different processes, some of which are as innocuous as eating 4 ounces of a particular kind of yogurt every day that produces more of these things in you to a huge extent. So maybe I'm producing, say, 3 of these macrophage things an hour, and if I ate the yogurt, I might produce 30 an hour for the period of time that I'm eating the yogurt, so I get more. Or it might be 300 more, or it might be 3,000. I'm not sure the exact numbers, and I don't think anybody is, but enough that it is effective. However, there are people that are now taking the GCMAF and putting it into delivery systems in ways that are not being stomped on by the powers that be, where they used to stomp them on the injectable form. Okay, because the injectable form was so incredibly effective. Yeah,
effective?
It was like.
Now let me ask you: does it work really, really quickly?
Mm-hmm. It does. Injectable, and by the way, 100% no side effects. None.
Well, you know what? I'm wondering if this is very similar to what Ian's doing, because his works within 48 hours at like 98.3%.
It's different process.
And it's probably very similar. I'm wondering if there's a similar thing. But I'm thinking that you could do a combo. I like you said, multifaceted approaches. I really think that multifaceted approaches could just really knock shit out. Really.
Well, you got to be careful. Okay, so.
Because it can hurt each other.
Correct. You have to be careful because, I won't take Phil's C60 in black seed oil while I'm doing GCMAF, because the black seed oil is going to be not harmonious to that, right? Because it's antibacterial.
It's like grapefruit.
Right. It's going to be cleansing things out, and you wouldn't have the ability to build up these, right? So, but the GCMAF, I think, is the if you got to look for a single point of entry to deal with cancer, that I think is in my research so far, I've found nothing better. I like reishi mushrooms. I like the medicinal mushrooms. I'm continuing on those. I'm continuing on alternating between cordyceps and nicotine riboside for energy support. The cordyceps mushroom appears to do the same thing as the NR and the NMN, but it is specifically also anti-cancer for kidneys and so forth.
And I want to talk about the NMN before you go too, because
that's
stuff. A very interesting thing.
So,
but keep going.
So
it is, and
So my issue is I had a cancer in my colon, and and I lost 6 months to this oncologist who basically told me, we're not going to give you chemotherapy. And he didn't bother to say, it's not because I figured, oh, well, you're not going to get chemotherapy. There's no more problem. I don't have to worry about it. They just gloss over the fact they're not giving you any chemotherapy because they want another cancer to grow so they can go through another round and get more money from you. When they can image it, they can do something, right? For God's sake. Okay, so I lost 6 months with this guy, but during that 6 months, I came across the medicinal mushrooms. Now, I had a good number. I'm getting this blood test that is basically it assesses your level of cancer cells that you're producing. And within 4 months of cancer surgery, it should be down at about a 3. I had achieved that. And then it started going back up again. And so that's when I started figuring, well, this asshole doctor is just going to sit there and let it go up until he can cut something out. And I didn't want that. So I started doing things to alter that number. I'm doing the blood tests on my own now. Just had my blood drawn 2 days ago, and I'll know next week what my numbers are. But I'm not going to get particularly bent out of shape by them because I'm just starting the GCMAF protocol in yogurt form today, and I'm going to have GCMAF and a couple of other delivery forms show up over these next few weeks.
How expensive is that?
You can find it cheap. Okay, here's the thing. I bought the expensive form of the yogurt, which is $400 for, I think it's like a 9-month supply. It's a huge amount, okay? It's 13 packages, maybe it's 13 months. So it's $400 for all of the stuff to make it for 13 months. And that's usually the course of treatment you need to have for the GCMAF to totally get rid of all of the cancers on you. Even if it was injectable, it would do its major work, say, within 9 weeks, but you need to stay on it for a period of time, so because your body is still producing those cancer cells, and you got to just stay up on top of it, is basically the issue, right? So it's like you got to clip your fingernails every so often, or they get too long. Well, you got to get rid of the cancer cells, or they cause you problems. So it's about $400 for the yogurt, but you can find cheaper versions of it. You can also find the yogurt that's been concentrated, and it's all of the GCMAF is reasonably expensive to deal with, but it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And here's the thing: I was offered or I was told about, I don't know it was specifically an offer, through the oncologist, that basically he was saying, if you got to such and such a stage, if we saw that these numbers were at such and such a stage, we would think certain things had occurred. And that one of the things that had occurred was that it had metastasized into your liver. Well, if you get cancer in your liver, they can't operate on it. They can't, except for very rare occasions, they can't remove tumors from your liver. And so his thing was, if you get to that stage, we've got this drug for you. And for $100,000, you can get a year's treatment.
Yes.
Okay, but here's the thing. If it gets to that stage, the drug is effective, and what it does is it gets you 3 months extra life for your $100,000. And so
yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's absurd. So based on that, though, $400 for 13 months worth of this yogurt that plumps up your GCMAF as its primary goal is cheap. Okay, GCMAF.
Well, absolutely.
Now,
yes.
here's the thing. I found it in GCMAF. I found it in a spray bottle, 50,000 units in a spray bottle. Very heavy dose, $521. I found creams. Again, going back to the skin delivery systems, right? The creams at 8,000 IU international units in it for the creams at, say, $250. And so the spray bottle might be, I don't know how long it would last. It might be months and months and months because you're only going to use a little tiny bit with each spray. You don't need to put that much into you. And it's better to sort of like flood the system with it once and then just stay up on a regular dose because you need it continuously to fight the cancer cells as they arise. There are those people that have used it as a treatment in Europe. It's also folded into cancer treatment in Germany. It's folded into cancer treatment in Denmark. Throughout most of the northern European states, it's part of the oncology industry. But over here, no.
Well, we are just,
I know.
We're behind on a lot of things. I know there's stem cell work.
We're captives to the American Medical Association.
There's stem cell work that they're doing. It's out of Japan, and the Bahama Islands is doing it. Getting people out of wheelchairs and, with rheumatoid arthritis and all that stuff. But
MS.
Here it's illegal.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, MS. Yeah. It's illegal here.
But hey,
I mean, that's what I'm saying. We're not civilized when you purposely hurt people so that people can make more money.
Exactly,
that's not a civil.
That's not the civilization I want to live in, right? But the C60,
Exactly.
You've heard about the stem cells in the C60, though, right?
Oh, yes. I'm going to do a show with Phil and Max on that, the incredible increase in stem cells. Yeah. But I do want you to get hold of Ian Mitchell because I do think that this cancer stuff is, you will fall out of your chair when you see the results that they're having with some of the stuff.
Now, see, I didn't have any metastasization, okay, because I think that my body was, because all my life I've been taking supplements, even though I had the cancer, it was...
But you had to have some.
What's that?
Because basically, if a tumor forms, you're having some. Basically, it stops the tumor from growing at all. I mean, it stops the cells from dividing at all. It stops cancer cells from forming.
Yeah, and I'll certainly talk to him. I was getting that stuff for that reason for my dogs too, because so many dogs now are dying of cancer, right? So I'm giving my dogs.
Oh, they're at 50%, over 50%.
Yeah, and I'm giving. Oh no, actually, I was talking to my vet 2 weeks ago in his practice here in Podunk, Washington, way the hell out on the coast. He's running 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 dogs. If they don't die of an accident, 9 out of 10 dogs are dying from cancer.
Yeah, well, and people need to realize that C60 doesn't cure cancer. I don't want people to think that C60... Now, C60 does make your body stronger against cancer, but it does not cure cancer.
It's not a treatment, correct. But it does have incredible I mean, the unexpected side effect of the stem cells.
Oh, yeah.
The boost here. So I was talking to a guy, the guy's in Europe. He's like 82 or 83. He's going to have a birthday here pretty soon. And he had gone in for stem cell treatment. And the way that they do the stem cell treatment there is they spin them out of your blood. They spin your blood out and they take the stem cells out of the plasma and they give you the blood back, put it back into you. And previously he'd had a stem cell treatment that was like a year and a half ago. And he said it took him 4 months to get enough plasma with stem cells in it for them to culture the stem cells to then put into him. And he felt great. He loves stem cells. Man, talk about this guy, he'd be eating stem cells if it was a candy bar, he'd be eating them constantly, right? From the effect. But this time it took one blood draw as opposed to months of blood draws.
Because of the C60.
Because he'd been taking C60 for just slightly less than a year.
I did a show with Phil and Max on it, and we talked about the superhuman plasma, and that's because of the C60. It's freaking awesome.
That's a good way to characterize it. It is atypical to anything that they see. And when they drew my blood here 2 days ago, the woman who's drawing my blood is looking at it like, this is a little weird. It's awful damn red to be coming out of that thing.
Exactly. It's incredible. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
Will you explain the NMN? Because I'm starting to represent Reb Genetics as one of my affiliates because I have to support myself, and I'm looking for really good products to bring to people. And one of theirs is an NMN, which is better than NAD, right? Because it's NAD. It's a NAD precursor to create more NAD. So it's better than just taking NAD itself. But you are the one that showed me it in the beginning, and I've been taking it for about 5 months now, and then I'm like, I got to get this for people. And I've just been working with the president of the company to establish it as something I can offer to people. And I want you to explain it because you explained it to me and got me excited about it. And now I've been taking it for 5 months, and I want people to understand why it works with C60 and helping you generate stem cells.
Sure. Okay, so I can't speak to how that the NR or the NMN aspect impacts the stem cells directly, okay, other than the way that it affects the cells at the mitochondria level. But here's what happens. C60 has this really cool thing about it where if a cell, okay, all right, so all your cells have little tiny power plants in them. Each cell might have 50 or 100 of these little tiny power plants. They're called mitochondria. And when they get down to, say that the cell is born or splits off and it's got 60 of these power plants, as you burn sugar, which is basically what we do, those power plants eventually get waste built up around them and they sort of clogged up and the cell doesn't really do very well. And at some point it wants to just get out of the body. The body would prefer that it leave because it's using more energy than it's providing. But many cells, these senescent cells, these zombie cells, they hang around because they're just barely at the threshold to be kicked out, so they don't trigger any process. And what happens is C60 comes along, and C60 clears out the debris around the power plants. Okay, it gets rid of all of the oxidative stress, the residue that the power plants have. And it does this to all of your cells. Well, those cells that have malfunctioning power plants, many of them don't revive after the waste material is cleaned up around them. And so, but now the body can clearly see that cell's had it, and it does this stuff called apoptosis, kills that cell off and kicks it out so they can get a healthier cell. And that process of the apoptosis is what induces the body to continue to produce stem cells. So C60 may be causing stem cells to be created just because it's killing off all these other marginal cells. The NMN and NR, which is NR is nicotinamide riboside, another form of the same chemical. So NR has two more chemical processes that are necessary to convert it into NMN, and then NMN has two processes to be converted into NAD. And NAD is like your fuel for your power plant. Okay, so you need all these NAD molecules to have fuel for your power plant, but you can't really eat them because your stomach's going to destroy so much of them and it's going to alter the others. So you need to get at it through NR or through NMN. And what it does is it actually is producing new activity in the power plants that had been marginal, as well as those that are fully operating. It just makes them that much more efficient, and it's like you've got more fuel in your system. So as an old guy, at 65 years old, especially having gone through the cancer, I was wasting away, had no energy, and so on. And I discovered by reading in some of the literature that there was a trial of nicotinamide riboside. Now, bear in mind, NMN and NR are both forms of vitamin B. Okay, so they exist in you already, and it's just a vitamin. But there were studies with people with kidney cancer where they were giving them these substances, NR actually specifically, to see if they could give them more energy and to prevent muscle wasting, because the kidney cancer is particularly bad for muscle wasting. And it did. It gave these guys more energy. They were able to start putting on some muscle mass, and it was pretty good for them. It's not an anti-cancer thing, but I came across it because I was doing cancer research. And it was just one of the side effects where they wanted to try and give quality of life to people in this particular study. And then I started investigating the two substances and found out that there's a whole industry out there producing them. They're relatively cheap for what they do. And
they are
incredibly cheap. And
I was surprised. And NMN, they found, is more effective than NR. Like you were saying, it's two steps closer.
It wasn't available at the time I started getting into this. I had to go with NR because I couldn't find the NMN
it's pretty
anywhere.
New. Yeah.
In fact, I want to get some now that it's available. So,
yeah.
But another thing to note is I actually have found that cordyceps mushroom does exactly the same thing in terms of how my body feels as the NR, but it also adds beta glucans and some other stuff. So that's why I alternate. That's why I don't take them. So I'll do 5 days on NR and then, 2 weeks on cordyceps, another 5 days on NR, back and forth, just swap it up. One of the things I want to prevent is that within the human body, the reason that most medicines fail is, and they refuse to acknowledge this in allopathic medicine, is the human body reacts to the medicine and decides it's not going to work anymore. So any given medicine you get is only good for maybe 18 months, and you're going to have to find something else. So you've got to have these cycles of not being on it in order to boost its effectiveness again on anything.
Well, I'm very interested in seeing if you switch from the NR to MNN, because in studies it's showing that it's like twice as effective.
I'd love to try it. It'll be quite nice. I have plenty of energy at the moment. I'm going to go, when we're done here, I'm going to go and work in the greenhouse and do that kind of thing.
That's great.
Been working out,
That's great, especially with cancer. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, that is excellent. I'm just so happy that you fired your guy and you're looking into other things, because that's bullshit. And I couldn't be more upset. And that's why I support the work that Ion's doing. I think that our country closing down like the cancer people being killed and everything, that's just so bullshit, especially with 1-in-1 people. We got to figure this crap out.
Well,
I mean, we're going to have people dying all over the place. It's going to be like the Black Plague.
We already do, and that's an incredible.
Well, I know.
Our medical system is horrific. It's a harvesting system, the way that Catherine Austin Fitts says. It's not there for your health. It's there for their money.
It is. Well, now how can people get hold of you? I know we have your YouTube channel. What are you doing so that people can follow you?
Basically, I've got to get my own infrastructure together here. I've got several months worth of work on my greenhouse. I've got a couple of new projects going that will maybe be public at the, fall to the end of the year. And people will be interested in them then. But in the main, I'm just doing a few interviews and kicking back and doing my own stuff. Not going to produce any reports, because I don't want to get diverted from doing the cancer stuff. I started doing these video series called Cancer Ward on my YouTube channel, where I show the point is to provide my latest thinking and my latest results to people that also might be in this situation. So I've got a lot of people that are corresponding with me about their cancer issues. So it's sort of led to being a center of that, and it may take off even more. But at the moment,
well, in a good way, having a mind like yours focusing on it is really great. That's why you have to get a hold of Ion, because and I've been telling Phil and Max, I finally got them together, and I'm trying to get Ken together. Want all your great minds to get together, because working in islands is not
sure. Combinoric,
come on, guys.
Combinoric is better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll certainly
Yes.
connect with Ian and see what's going on. But in terms of my stuff, it's I'll have something out. I'll know more probably in June or July as to what happens in April or May. We're going to get some news out about cryptos. There are going to be some temporal markers that will fall then that I will use as my guide for what to do the rest of the year. And it's just got to be at that level now, because in these next few months, I've got to get stuff around here done. And I'm working on building my body back after, this hugely disfiguring, terrible surgery and all of its problems. So,
Yes. Well, okay. Well, I'm just going to give you good wishes, and hopefully, like I said, the universe gave it to you for a reason. And now if you can use it to educate and help everybody else, that would be absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much. I know you're going to do more of these reports, so you'll come back.
Yeah, I got to be doing something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, for yourself too, and gifts for me.
Yeah. Yeah, just for you. Just for you.
Yeah.
Well, you enjoy your day, and I'll chat with you later about other items.
Okay. Thank you so much, Clif. This is going to go up on Sunday at 7.
Okay. I'll let people know, and I'll probably go and join the chat.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Okay. Thank you.
Finally, I have the mini shockwave stun gun and pepper spray combo available directly. These powerful defense devices are incredibly small size. It's an ace up your sleeve for self-protection. It doesn't pop up on x-rays and scanners, so you can conceivably take it places most weapons can't go. Self-defense should never be complicated, and the mini shockwave and pepper spray combo are very easy to use. I plan on making sure every woman in my family has one of these, and any teenager, boy or girl, should be carrying these around as well. If you feel that they're safe and can handle these with all the problems going on in this world, I would want my loved ones to be as protected as possible. Together, they're only $29.99. See the link below for this amazing deal.